Oh yeah, baby. You know you like that groove. I sure did. I liked the one before that a little bit more, but hey, who knows what might be. So welcome to the Doug Rice Show. I am Doug Rice. Straight up, 8 a.m. It is the Doug Rice Show, and well, thank you for joining me. Just so you know, brought to you by Twit. I'm in full Twit gear. Thank you, folks, for lending me your ear. You got the gloves on. I got the gear. I am geared up from ear to eared up. Now my mind might get seared up. I don't know. I don't know. We're gonna do something. All right. So welcome to the Doug Rice Show. My name is Doug Rice. Please like, subscribe, hit the buttons that you got to hit. All the stuff you know. That's it now. It's kind of cool here in Phoenix, but good Lord, it ain't that cool. You get under these lights and the pressure of having to perform, and we know that's well above the norm, so you got to get a little more comfortable, and that's what I'm going to do. So I feel wonderful. 8 o'clock in the morning, 24th of November. Don't wait for me to hope you had anything of any more than a good Thursday yesterday. I hope Thursday was cool. I hope Wednesday was cool. I hope today's cool. I hope whatever day we spend in the confines of this caucastic, contributing just to nothing civilization of cool. Otherwise, hope everything's good. Yeah, that's how I live. That's how I roll. That is the story I want told. All right, folks, good morning. Today, we have a mouthful, I know, right? Came your way. Black segregation matters, school resegregation, and black educational opportunity. What a mouthful. But you got your kids in school. You have your children in these schools. And for those that do, I consider you fools. Not in the strictest sense, naturally, because it rhymed, but it's the first thing that does come to mind. To put your children in the hands of these individuals that think so little of Negroes, to understand what they are teaching has little variation or relation to the truth, and it's so far-reaching. So today, we have a lot that we'll say by Gary Orfield and Danielle Jarvie. I wanted to make sure I didn't butcher her name, so please forgive me, folks. I didn't mean to step on her fame. Here you are. There it is, and there it shall be. Black Segregation Matters, School Resegregation and Black Educational Opportunity by Gary Orfield and Danielle Jarvie, for all the Negro Nation to see. All right, so that is going to be the review on the show today. I always, before we get going, I always want you to know and really stay in the knowing. And Black Friday, I understand, is today. And my moderator, Katrina, told me to say that, you better say something about the origins of Black Friday. So that is what I will do. And I think it is appropriate, too. Thank you so much. Thank you, Katrina, for reminding me, because, I try to think of as much as I can, and it gets sometimes a bit of a strain. All right, so the origins of Black Friday, I already know. It's about selling us on the block, on the auction block, just so. And a lot of things emanate from that origin. It became a shopping day. And let me see what they say. Some have argued that Black Friday regards the sale of Negroes during the, hold on one sec, folks, because I want to make sure that we don't read anything that is integral. I want to make sure that you have all of it. Hold on one moment. Boom. Okay. All right. So here are the things that they say regarding this day, Black Friday.
All right, so it talks about the most commonly repeated story behind Thanksgiving shopping related Black Friday traditional links it to retailers. We know that's a lie. It's very inaccurate. I wonder if they're going to get into the history of Black Friday regarding its sale of slaves, and that is what I am looking for. But 1961 Black Friday caught on in Philadelphia to the extent that city merchants. So they're not talking about Black Friday being anything other than, you know, the pretend celebration that they put on. But I think there's more to this story. Hold on. Just a simple Google, I believe, will prove. Back in the 1800s, Southern plantation owners could buy enslaved workers at a discount on the day after Thanksgiving. That is the word that they also say is not really true. It does say that. I have to let you know that. It does say that Black Friday is not, in fact, true in that it associates itself with that action, the selling of slaves on the plantation after Thanksgiving. And I'm just going to, that's the life I'm living. I'm not going to spread it if I don't think it's real. Forgive me, but that's just how I feel. So that is the feedback that I get. And I think I'm just going to leave it right there. Yes, right there. So Black Friday is, in some people's minds, a day after Thanksgiving that slave owners were able to get a discount on slaves. It does say that that's a myth. However, we know that the stock exchange, we know that Chase Bank, we know that these banking facilities and other folks, small hats, got rather rich for the sale of Negroes on every day of the week. So my apologies to those who may hear me speak. That is the way I feel at this moment. So there, we'll just leave it right there. I hope everybody understands that. All right, look, again, if I see that something might have a questionable, origin, if I see that there might be a falsehood in what it might say, I'm going to say that too every day. In fact, I'll give you a hint. We're going to go over something called the something of Zionists. There's the Protocols of Zion. Thank you for my memory. We are going to look into the Protocols of Zion. Just to give you a heads up so you understand I'm really trying. The Protocols of Zion I began to look into as a legitimate way to, really point and say what they are doing these days. But as I looked more into that, I understand that the Protocols of Zion are not real. So I'm going to give a story, or rather later today, I'm going to give you the evidence that I feel proves that the Protocols of Zion are not true. So that's how real we're going to keep it here on the Doug Wright Show. But today, thank God I made that way back. Lord, that was a heck of a track. Today, we're going here. Black segregation matters, school resegregation, and Black educational opportunity by Gary Orfield and Danielle Jarvie. And the point of this oration today, folks, if you keep your children in schools today, I don't really know what to say. I really don't. How much proof do we need? Now, this tries to approach this topic from the need to reinstate or to take a look at the desegregation of schools and attempt in some way to continue the failure of resegregating or putting the schools together. So let's just listen to how this approaches. Like I said, every proof they give for assistance to Negroes are instructions laid to those that have no intent to help us. Understand that. They write paper after paper what the problem is, how to solve the problem in the community, and it serves as a template for what they will do in reverse. Now you go ahead and listen to that verse. Here we go. Hopefully you can hear this. This is the Doug Wright Show.
Black segregation matters. School Resegregation and Black Educational Opportunity by Gary Orfield and Danielle Jarvie. Foreword. Throughout American history, Black students have faced segregated schools. After generations of failure in trying to make segregated schools equal, civil rights lawyers won a powerful, unanimous 1954 Supreme Court decision that changed American law and demanded change. Most Black students have always lived and gone to school in the 17 states that had a long history of segregation by law until the Supreme Court's decision in Brown v. Board of Education. That decision was fiercely resisted, but after the civil rights movement's major successes, change was enforced under the L. 964 Civil Rights Act and through increasingly strong Supreme Court decisions.
Now, I want to pause for the cause just for the purpose of educating that they are now attacking these legislative acts that were put into play back in the 60s, back in the day. And they are having success as the court has been stacked against us, and provenly so. And if you just wait a little time, you'll see how they go. All right. I just wanted to say that. I thought it was important. You guys continue to listen.
Those breakthroughs, however, were followed by a new wave of determined resistance, especially during conservative administrations. As the courts changed with court appointments, there were, first, limits and then reversals. Segregation declined for decades after the civil rights movement, but was followed by resegregation as the courts withdrew. A line was drawn, denying Black students access to suburban schools, even when they had been illegally segregated. In many places where Black students had won access to strong magnet schools, for instance, they were sent back to weak neighborhood schools. For a quarter century, the Civil Rights Project has regularly monitored the trends in segregation and desegregation of U.S. schools.
Stop. I need to approach that for a moment. Are you telling me that they've monitored the situation of segregation, knowing that there is an uneven station that we sit upon? We improved the circumstances of our own community and over time. And if we had been left alone to our own devices, our children would have done better, yours and mine. That's just the way it is. I think that, the mixing was a trap. I think it stopped a lot of that which they found offensive. And the offense was that we were in their face and constantly about how they tried to put us in our place instead of simply allowing us to be those of us that took the lead. Where are they at? Where are they at now? They've seemed to have receded. Anyway, so I just wanted to say that it's important we understand that objectively this is written from the view of another man, but we're still going to listen because there are facts in there. All right, don't go anywhere.
Our work extends into many other areas of educational opportunity, including college access, discrimination in school suspension and special education placement, reducing high school dropouts, improving testing strategies, reforming failing school accountability policies, discrimination in language and immigration policies, evaluating magnet school and charter school efforts, and unequal college preparation, to name a few. We continuously watch and report on school segregation issues because wherever we turn, whatever data we examine, we find that the pattern of unequal opportunities and outcomes are related to racial separation for students of color in lower achieving schools. In some analyses, there is a clear difference in financial resources related to the race or ethnic composition of a school. Point one in others. The schools in concentrated poverty areas receive supplemental funds, but inequalities often persist. We have never presented school desegregation as either easy or as a panacea, but we are quite certain that segregation is one of the central mechanisms for perpetuating inequality in American society.
Again, folks.
We believe that integration, particularly when done...
1 second. Again, folks, what I'm doing is looking at this from the reverse. No matter, I understand what they're saying, but we need to consider it from the reverse and how it benefits us to be separated from these individuals as they teach their children in school, most assuredly. It's where our children are most at risk. They give every reason here to not desegregate, to leave your children out of the school system. I don't understand anyone looking at these facts and determining that, you know what, there are problems within the school system. I'll send my child anyway. You know, your kids, especially Negro children, go into a system where certain things I think most of us have forgotten have occurred. For instance, the petition by white students circulated in schools, I'm going to say either Ohio or somewhere crazy, where they wanted to bring back slavery. I mean, that was pretty unsavory. More of that. How about in Utah? I bring this one up. You saw the 10-year-old who committed suicide because of the children's teasing and jibes. What are they teaching their children in their eyes? And so you look at all the reasons that they give for seizing your child out of the systems and just act like, you know, they missed them. Seriously, don't leave your kids here. Listen to how screwed up it is. Just here.
Well, with a diverse faculty and curriculum is both a powerful educational treatment and one of the few major institutional strategies our country has for bridging dangerous racial divides, fears, and stereotypes. The new data in this report is an important status check on the current situation of the nation's Black students.
All right, so now they're gonna talk about the current circumstances. Okay, here's what they're gonna go through. This is gonna itemize and give you every concerned reason you might have to snatch your child out of the school system. I want you to listen carefully.
Executive summary. Black students account for about 1/7 of U.S. school enrollment, which has remained a largely stable proportion for decades. The highest concentrations are in the 17 former slave states, which maintained segregation by state law until the Supreme Court's Brown decision in 1954. The South has grown sharply in population and now is the nation's largest region, with 34% of all students, followed by the West with 25%. The South has the highest share of Black students, 23%, while the West has the lowest, 4.8%. The South is also the area where the deepest and most extensive school integration efforts took place during the Civil Rights era.
Okay, so now, as we look today at what we see happening in the United States, the slow turn of the mental worm within these individuals and how they yearn to bring back the good old days. I'm still waiting for how all of this benefited any of Negroes anyways. I really am. I want to hear this. And remember, listen critically to everything that's being said.
Various community types have different shares of Black students. Black students have the largest share of enrollment, almost 1/4 of the total, in the central cities of large and middle-sized metros, and they have the lowest representation in towns and rural areas. About 1/7 of the students in the suburbs of the largest metros are Black. There is considerable residential and educational separation between poor and middle-class Black families within metro areas. When Brown was decided, U.S. schools were overwhelmingly white with about 1/8 of enrollment Black students.
So hear that. Back then, those were the stats, and we're digging in. What do you think about that? Let's go.
Other groups had very small proportions. Latinos and Asians were not even counted nationally until 1968.
Wow.
Immigration changed that sharply. Now there are 27% Latino and 6% Asian students in U.S. schools, making the country highly multiracial. The proportion of white public school students has dropped considerably and continuously for the last quarter century. This is not because of transfer to private schools, which have a declining share of total enrollment and have themselves become somewhat more diverse. The white decline reflects historically low birth rates and immigration patterns that are overwhelmingly non-white.
Well, now, I did not see that factoid come out of sight. That was interesting. So remember that they at times have a little bit of feeling regarding why things are the way they are, and some will give this excuse. Some will say, and I'm glad that they put it this way. It's not because they transfer out into better schools or private schools or things they consider better schools, but schools where they have more of a control of where their dollars go to an extreme. But because of the low birth rates. That's interesting. That's interesting. I like that fact. All right, here we go.
The changing racial proportions make widespread desegregation more difficult. School desegregation was most actively pursued a half-century ago from the middle L960s to the early L970s, resulting in major declines in the segregation of black students from L965 to 1972. Desegregation was durable and peaked in 1988. Urban desegregation in the South was ordered in 1971, and in a much weaker form in the North in L973, but was critically limited by 1974.
So I think that's an important fact to bring out as well, folks. You know how long ago that was? That really wasn't long ago at all. It says that desegregation peaked in 1988. That's how long it took for them to shake their racist sentiment. And now I think it's back to represent what they truly feel. What's the real deal? I don't think that racist sentiment will ever heal. We'll see. I don't know. That's just me. Let's go.
There have been no major legal or policy advances since that time. The most extensive and long-lasting desegregation took place in areas with county-wide school districts embracing all or a very large part of a major metro area housing market, much more common in the South than in the industrial North. Desegregation was only implemented where there was a proved history of official discrimination against black students.
Oh, wait a minute. What is that? Desegregation was only implemented where they actually found it. So what did that leave places closed to Negroes and those they thought Negroes confounded? Now you understand the detail in the details. You can glean from what's said, what's not said, and what's read. All right, I just wanted to kind of get to that. That was interesting. So desegregation was only implemented where there was a proved history of, and they said this, official desegregation against black students. So if they kept it under the DL, if they kept it on the down low, and it was successful in doing so, well, you could count on a Negro, nowhere there he'd show. That's interesting. I'm going to keep going on that. Wow.
In 17 states, this was not hard to show because segregation was required by state law. In other states, civil rights lawyers had to prove that the schools had been intentionally segregated by school officials through decisions about buildings, attendance boundaries, teacher assignment, and many other elements, combinations of which were almost always found. Official action fostered segregation across the U.S.
And how did that go, folks? Does anybody know? How did that go? I got pictures I can show, just so you know. We got students screaming, yelling, looking like demons, selling all the division and the derision. So I look at what they've done, and it seems that they're more focused on their attempted fix. But the cause and the folks involved, that fact they want to nix. I don't. When I read what's being written, sometimes I'm just smitten with how they kind of dance around the facts and act like these kind of attacks didn't happen within the frame of the story they're trying to play. I just don't get it. This is a story about the attitude of white people in this country against Negroes and the steps taken toward trying to correct that, failing miserably. But between the lines, it's an interesting tale. I just wanted to point that out. And so we can get back to it, have no doubt. I'm sorry, folks, I do this.
Intense segregation in 90 to 100% non-white schools fell very sharply from 78% of black students in L968 to 24% in the southern states by L988, but has now risen back to 37%, still less in the South than in other parts of the country.
Oh, so isn't that interesting? Segregation has risen, and that, I don't know if this writing's time. I do have to try to fit that in the rhyme. What time the date of this writing was? I believe it's somewhere. But that's interesting. So segregation is on the rise, and I think it's risen even still. It's an interesting statement to make. All right, it's a hard swallowing pill.
Civil rights enforcement had a lasting impact until it was largely undone by the 1991 Dallas Supreme Court decision ending desegregation plans.
Boom. Where are we at, folks? You need to hear that again? Because you need to hear that again, folks. Understand, it's not about what he's saying to make his point. It's about the points he's making that's making his point.
Civil rights enforcement had a lasting impact until it was largely undone by the 1991 Dallas Supreme Court decision ending desegregation plans. Black students are far more segregated from white students now than in the civil rights era, but attend school with many more Latinos.
Isn't that fun? I love the way they include everyone, except, what? Really? Was that necessary? I don't know. Was that its own sentence? I'm sorry.
In 1991, the typical black student was in a school with a third white students, but now only 1/4.
How do you feel? Do you feel comfortable? Huh? They're circulating petitions. Okay. They're taking votes to bring back slavery. Children are doing this. Look, when I say kids, I do mean 8, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. Children are just circulating. Who thinks of doing that in a school? What child has on its mind to torment another child of 8 or 9 until the point they are so inclined to take their life? I cannot find a single reason that might happen, but it did happen, and it happened in all the places it happened in Utah, where there are Mormons. This is supposed to be the most righteously clean white people on the planet. And okay. Stop.
However, the Latino share is up from 9% to 21% in the same time span. In the South, at its peak, about 42% of black students were in majority white schools.
Boom. Listen to this.
That percentage has declined to 27%. New York is the most segregated state in the country for black students.
I'm sorry, you didn't hear that? Oh, maybe you didn't hear what he just said. Are you listening? Well, pack your gear. We're almost out of here. For those of you that are Black Americans and want to stay and want to, somehow dig in more this way, do that. Get to that. Listen.
New York is the most segregated state in the country for black students. The average black student in New York State attends a school with only 15% white students, and 64% of black students are in intensely segregated schools with 90 to 100% non-white students.
You think that's by accident, folks? What are you doing? You see, he's just spitting out the facts, just kind of rolling through the facts like that. You understand that stems from an intended attitude. That stems from action taken by others. That speaks volumes. That's what that does. Okay, just listen.
Many of these schools are what we call apartheid schools, comprised of 99 to 100% non-white students. New York State is the most segregated, followed by Illinois, California, and Maryland, all with extreme segregation levels.
Okay, I'm feeling better now. Okay, y'all with me?
Black students' segregation from whites has been growing for decades, but often not producing all black schools. For black students, the share of black classmates has been dropping as the Latino share has risen.
I'm sorry, did I just get your attention? Oh man, the numbers just went up. Like, subscribe, share this live if you like that, what we're doing. Do me a favor so I can survive. But interesting facts. You see, he's trying to make a point while he's bringing out points that can just, you know what I mean? That's why I like doing this. You understand? I mean this.
This is most extreme in the West, where the typical black student attends a school where there are more than twice as many Latinos as fellow blacks, a minority within a minority.
Oh.
Illinois and New York State have the highest concentration of black students, with other black students, 76% on average in both states.
So my question now, does that relate to the activity that we see in Chicago? Are we so energized to go that in such close proximity without something or someone to lead, it's just, we just begin to ourselves feed? I mean, is that what we're doing? I'm just interested because I didn't know that the concentration of black students was in Illinois. I did not know that. Very interesting. All right, so let's just continue. I thought it was interesting.
Black students are often isolated from white and middle-class students, attending schools with other non-white groups in concentrated poverty. In these states, black students have the highest average percentage of black classmates. Among the nation's 20 largest school districts, black students have the least contact with white students in Chicago.
Whoa! Now that is an interesting, so where there are a large confab or a grouping of black society, black families, black students, and where we do, congregate in close proximity to one another in schools, then now the reverse is true where you don't come into any contact. So it's kind of interesting fact. That's interesting. You got to say that.
Followed by Dallas, Miami, and Prince George's County, MD, each with an average of less than 4% whites.
Interesting.
Black students are segregated in communities of all sizes, but it is less extreme in suburban, town, and rural schools. Abandoning any significant policy or legal effort to integrate schools has led to increasing isolation of black students in all sectors of American education. Segregation has not cured itself. Successful desegregation plans have been shut down as the courts reversed policy.
So, how can anyone not know? How can they not tell you more directly? How can their attitudes be more connectly driven against Negroes and toward those that they suppose might support their racist rant and their Nazi-like slant? I mean, what are they doing? I tell you, they're trying to ruin Negroes, and pretty soon they're gonna try to put something on our toes like tags. I'm just on one. You know what I mean? You know what this is, man? I'm gonna tell you what this is. This is telegraphing. We need to stop. We need to stop with this. This is telegraphing where their intent toward us is. No, there's no joking, and no, I'm not smoking. This is for real, and you know the deal. This is absolute truth. I'm putting in the booth, okay? When they start legislating and telegraphing what they intend to do, and they start with students and folks like us in school, what they're trying to do, we know, is to change history and show there's no association with them and what they've put Negroes through back then. And I think that's setting some sort of stage. I think they're intent on exerting their rage. And before they can move forward, they have to forget. And I believe the worst to come at us is yet to come. They're nowhere near done. And there may come a time when Negroes must run. Like, subscribe, share this live. I'm trying my best to survive, and survive I will. But yet and still, give so I can live. All right, let's continue. Here we go.
New policies are needed, and legislation recently passed by the House of Representatives, the Strength and Diversity Act, could be a positive beginning.
No, it's not a positive beginning. Did I just rain on your parade? Sorry, just water all over you. Yeah, boom. Yeah. There's no hope. Stop. There's no hope. There's no hope. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to be able to help themselves. There's no lifeline. There's no call they can make to help with answers. They're done. It's a wrap. Prepare to run, just like that.
Introduction.
Here we go.
Black and non-black attitudes about segregation.
Uh-oh.
The summer of 2020 brought the national surge of the historic Black Lives Matter protests against police violence, calling for fundamental change in the criminal justice system.
Let me stop before we continue because I need to massage your mental sinew and tell you that this effort is brought to you by Twitware. That's right, folks. I got to stop there because if I don't, well, I won't give the right credit to those that just get it. They put their support by, through, and the Doug Rice Show. And for that, I've got to let you know that, again, this is brought to you by Twitware. There he is right there. I hope I started the show for you to see. All right, just stare. Just stare at it. Take it all in. Look, folks, if you want the best in apparel, if you want the best in product, we take a great announcement. Twitware is where you want to go to Twitwear.com, Twitwear.com. Use the promo code TDRS, the Doug Rice Show. Get 10% off all your apparel, all your skincare needs. You know, I'm just let my beard grow out a little bit till I get my beard oil. It's gonna be tight, you know what I'm saying? Okay. This is a Negro-owned edifice. It is a woke Negro that owns Twitware. His name is Twit. I call it Twit. Twit. You know, I think he's got another, but Twit fits. So that's what I do. That's the acronym for Twit. You understand? I want you to do me a favor while you're sitting there, while you're looking at me, take this break. For goodness sake, go to twitwear.com and shop. Right? Don't let the phone drop. You can do this while I do this. Just we can both get through this and do it. Do it now. Twitwear.com. Wear it. Come on, man. Share it. Come on. Do all you need to do. Look at this gear. Look at it. Look at it. I'm waiting for that hat, Twid. I got to have it. You know I got to have that hat, man. And that one, too. I'll need both of those. So that's two. Okay? Both those. Blue. Thank you. All right, folks. Twitwear.com. It is not just apparel. It is a brand. That's what I do. I say it, and there we go. All right, that's that part of the show. I do appreciate you hearing me. So, all right, there we go. Back to it. We are talking about Black segregation matters, school resegregation, and we're going to discuss and continue from now the introduction. You know, folks, they're trying to prove a point here in this writing by these individuals that somehow segregation, desegregation, resegregation, somehow there needs to be a second attempt. They're trying to tell you that, you know, they segregated the schools and then they desegregated schools. And the resegregate, we need to try again. Look, man, there's a lot to this writing. Okay, there's a lot to it, but I picked the best pieces that I could get through it. And it's not that long, doesn't go on for long. But the points made in some people in what it said can usually represent the opposite meaning, and you can get a different gleaning. So you can pull from the facts the reasons for the reverse of his meaning. That's really true. And that's what we're going to be seeing. All right, so let's continue from the introduction. Okie dokie. And like, subscribe, share, do all the things you see down there. And let's continue from right there.
Introduction. Black and non-black attitudes about segregation. The summer of 2020 brought the national surge of the historic Black Lives Matter protests against police violence, calling for fundamental change in the criminal justice system. That was, of course, part of a much longer and wider struggle against discrimination and for equal opportunity in American society. In spite of many frustrating experiences, this summer, not only 94% of blacks, but also the largest majority of the total population, 64%, agreed with the proposition that our country needs to continue making changes to give blacks equal rights with whites.
All right, so let me stop there and let me pull this to your site. All right, is it not of any interest that that itself is a fact? I mean, he just seems to write it through as if, just like that. And the question has to be asked, and the resolution has to be tasked, right? But this is something we've been through before. I can't just set that aside and ignore the rotational cyclic events that seem to represent failure in every relating. And I'm not going to be abating. This is absolutely the reason we need to call it a done season. They're not going to change. Don't re-vote. Don't reassess the mess. Don't try to surmise and guess. It's done. Prepare to run. I'm not playing. You hear what they're saying? Like regurgitating vomit. I'm sick of their empty promises. It's stupid.
School inequality has long been a central issue in the Black community and is evident in recent surveys. 70% of Blacks surveyed said that racism was one of the most important issues in the presidential campaign.
Really? Really? And they ran with that, didn't they? Because they just keep carrying that ball right into the fall.
81% said that most whites do not understand the level of discrimination blacks face. In its September 2020 annual survey on education, Capan magazine reported a national survey showing that 79% of blacks saw education as a highly important issue, with 46% of them viewing it as extremely important.
Well, let me educate you right now. What blacks don't like being called above more things than the N-word are blacks. For God, what is this dude? No, here's the deal. You can say, black people. You can say Negroes. Please say the Royal Negro moniker will work all day and twice on Sunday. I'll take that. Go back to calling us Negroes. Look it up.
90% of blacks, compared to 62% of whites, believe that government should increase its focus on protecting students from discrimination in their schools.
Really? Why is that?
Only a fourth of blacks, for example, support test-based admissions to special programs that lower Black and Latino access.
Whoa, so only a fourth of Negroes, for example, support test-based admissions to special programs that lower Black and Latino access? I would say that would be an interesting percentage, but let's keep going.
Black and Latino families are significantly more willing than whites to consider transferring their child to another school if it is feasible. 3 Most Americans know that we are far from solving our racial divide.
Far. More than far, folks. It's unsolvable. The only solution is our exit.
That discrimination continues, and that the schools have major importance in a solution, since Americans see schools as the answer to inequality.
Whoa, which Americans see schools to the answer of inequality? Which of the Americans they consider Americans see the answer? And let me explain. Now, understand what else he's saying. I'm going to come to focus here. Listen, let me tell you something. If that's the case, do you understand how the information is right in our face? If that's the case, then now we know why you want CRT to what you call it to be eliminated completely. Now we know why you are paying such focus and attention to the schools. Because you feel, and if this is a true statement, then it's real, right? That equality begins with school. So in the reverse, that means that inequality begins with the schools as well. That's right. If they're astute enough to know, point out, and show that equality, bringing all people into equal bearing amongst one another, is a way to bring that about through education in the school system, and they understand as well. There's a reverse here that they tell, that in order to bring about inequality, they must attack the schools and remove certain things that prove why this supposed equality must come to root. This is very interesting because the reason we go through these readings is to get the education Negroes are needing. And there's nothing that stops or should be impeding, not even generally interceding. I think if you folks want to think, for God's sake, please like, subscribe, and share, and do all the stuff that it does down there. And wow, I mean, I like this stuff. This tells you just like a double-edged sword. Just remember that. I got to get back to it. Here we go. Here we go, baby.
This does not mean, of course, that schools can solve all problems or that there is no discrimination within diverse schools. What Black parents are talking about is a sense that the schools for their children are inadequate and they want access to the stronger schools. In a 2018 national poll, 75% of the public said that there were fewer opportunities for students in schools in low-income areas, and 55% said that expectations were lower there as well.
And that is on purpose, folks. That's an intentional directive. There's somebody you can certainly make an associative connective with that action, taking action, gaining traction. I drift. What do you want me to do? It's a thing.
On the issue of race, 72% of Blacks believed Blacks had fewer educational opportunities, but only 32% of whites agreed. Whites were much more likely to see inequality for poor students without. Reference to race. Point 4 when asked about the importance of a racially and ethnically diverse student body in 2017, 72% of Blacks said that it was highly important, compared to 48% of whites and 57% of Latinos.
Okay, so now you know where the care is. Now you know the concerns dynamic, the percentages, right? And I mean, you need to note it clearly, okay? It's truly revealing, right? Don't let your heads hit the ceiling on your way out, because we're leaving, and that I have no doubt.
Blacks are the most likely to say that they would travel further to school for diversity, and most said they thought diversity improved the learning environment.
Stop. I'm going to just stop. Diversity does not improve the learning environment. In fact, let's just call it what it is. Diversity has proven not to improve the learning environment of those that need learning the most. You know, for the learning environment to take hold and improve the minds of Black students as they attend these schools that are devoid of their own, for that learning to take hold, they must strip themselves of themselves and hold on to something else that is not of themselves. And when that transformation is complete, there is no other kind of civilized compete. There's nothing that you can do. In their eyes, they're wheat. You know. And there they go. Into society. I've seen the variety. And, you know, it's a sad state of affairs. Folks like Tim Scott putting on airs. You know, he's a perfect example of a successful Negro in their eyes. You need to let that sink in. You need to understand what that means. Tim Scott or other Negroes they hold in high esteem, if you know what I mean. Think about the put on. Think about their dream. Well, you know, they all attended schools. I think they all look like fools, but I don't know. I think maybe they just want to obey their rules. Let's just keep going. I apologize.
There was stronger overall support for school diversity in the South than the West, The two areas where most students are non-white. 5 A 2017 national poll for NPR found that 74% of African Americans who lived in predominantly black areas said that black children where they live do not have the same chances as white children to get a quality education. Fewer blacks, 58%, living in majority non-black areas agreed. 45% of black residents in majority black areas said that the quality of public schools is worse than in other places, compared to only 23% of those living in majority non-black areas. 6 This does not mean that the blacks surveyed thought that diverse schools were problem-free, only that they had better quality.
Well, think of the framing of their answers, not that they were problem-free. You know, when you want your children to go to school, you want them to be safe, you want it to be clean, you want it to be all the things, you know what I mean? And so when they're talking about going to school with whites, they're not talking about getting a better education, all right? They're talking about a better environment for their children. That's what it is that Negro, and so if you took the resources from the white schools that hold these resources at bay, and you apply them to black schools and you pour in money, well, then we'll have a different thing to say. You understand? I need you to understand the framework with which they're trying to correctly or incorrectly move this. I understand he's doing hard things to prove this. It took two of them to write this. It'll take one of us to rewrite it. But I'm not playing. Look, you know what I'm saying, okay? This doesn't just say what they want this to say. This says a lot more. The facts are not in dispute. I like the way he writes it. He seems resolute. All right, we're going to continue. Let's go, folks. I'm trying to get through this just like you this.
After Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, who had attended an integrated school in Berkeley, California,
I'm sorry, what?
Raised the desegregation issue during the Democratic presidential primary debates.
What did she raise the desegregation issue for? She's not black.
The Gallup poll published a national survey in 2019. The survey showed that 68% of blacks and 65% of Latinos saw racial concentration or segregation as a serious problem, compared to 52% of whites. 75% of Democrats saw segregation as a serious problem, compared to 35% of Republicans.
Oh, of course, Republicans, there's no problem. We keep them where we want them. Ain't no issue. We got a few of them that's acting right. I got Tim Scott. You can see him day, but not at night. I did say it. Let him smile. You seen that dude? Stare at him a while.
53% of the public favored governmental action to reduce segregation, but 78% of blacks favored the same. When asked about methods to desegregate, 86% of blacks, 88% of Latinos, and 76% of whites favored magnet schools as a method. 74% of blacks favored redrawing attendance boundaries, and 65% supported busing students for integration.
Now, stop. And the reason I'm stopping here, folks, is because you understand the blueprint he now sets for those that oppose such action. You understand? I mean, I'm sure reading this gives them immense satisfaction. He's literally laying it out line by line, and all they have to do is seek and find and do the reverse, and all they need to do, and stuff will get worse.
81% of blacks and 58% of whites said that they favored strategies using location of more low-income housing in suburbs.
Okay, so that means keep low income out of suburbs
and other higher income areas. A 2020 article studying 5 southern communities found that black attitudes were consistently more positive toward desegregation than white attitudes.
Really? Is that like a surprise? Let me tell you what that means in my eyes. The fact that we're so willing to merge into the unwilling, the fact that we are so free with our presence in correlation with theirs. I mean, these folks aren't faking. They're not putting on airs. They don't want our being in their being. They don't want us seeing. They don't want us, you know what I mean, right? So it doesn't surprise me that factoid, that percentage that so many of us want to be represented within their communities. It just fuels the disunity within our Negro nation. And I just wanted to say that. Let's just get on with this station, I guess. Sorry, folks. Oh, goodness.
But their preferences had little relationship with the outcomes, which are more influenced by white attitudes. In other words, when blacks wanted action and whites did not, it was far less likely to happen than when whites favored it, suggesting the need for alliances. Point 8. Although there is a great deal of diversity of thought within the black community, substantial majorities of black respondents.
Okay, I gotta stop right. I'm sorry. No, we are gonna go through that again. And then we're gonna start with, in other words, you listen close because I'm gonna dissect that.
In other words, when blacks wanted action and whites did not, it was far less likely to happen than when whites favored it.
Stop trying to rush through that sentence. Okay? Now, let me tell you something, man. Let me tell you something so you understand. Because I'm going to say this one. Okay? Any environment in which you need the very people to help and assist you to escape the environment in order for it to be true is an environment you need to leave. Do you understand and perceive what I'm saying? Because I'm done on my knees and praying regarding these folks. They're all fools and jokes. You better hear me, Negroes. Any place where the only way that we are going to stop them from all that we say is if they are open to play. You hear that? That's not a good ratio. That's not a good environment for us to be in. That's not a good situation for us to be in. You need to hear what I just said. That's not a good situation. So in other words, the only way that we're going to get what's needed to equal the playing field, do the things unheeded, is if they can help us unimpeded. Is that what you're saying? Because if so, I ain't playing. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. That's a fight that's not even worth fighting. That's a wrong that simply can't, that's not worth righting because you're not going to right it. You better hear me on that. Maybe, you know what, I'm going to make the point just one more time. Hold on, because you better hear this again. Not just the rhyme, because this is very, very important. I like this.
In other words, when blacks wanted action and whites did not, it was far less likely to happen than when whites favored it.
We got to get out of the circumstance where we can't get anything done if they don't favor it. We got to get out of the circumstance, and it's impossible to get out of the circumstance here. We can't do it in this country. You have to leave. I bet you better understand and perceive what I'm saying is true. We cannot, that's the reason we've been marking time in this place. It's the reason we can't get ahead in this place. It's the reason we're regurgitating the same old bull. And quite frankly, I'm up to here, I'm full.
Suggesting the need for alliances. Point 8. Although there is a great deal of diversity of thought within the black community, substantial majorities of black respondents in recent surveys see segregation as providing inferior opportunities and view diversity as an important goal.
No, it is not, because if you pour money into the very segregated communities that you wish to desegregate, you would not have any kind of complaint.
And they favor a variety of policies to increase integration to access stronger schools. There have been similar findings in many surveys over the years. This does not mean that blacks think of desegregation as a cure-all.
It's not a cure-all. It's not even a cure. It's more an infection, to be sure.
That there is something magical about sitting next to whites, or that diverse schools do not have problems.
Whoa, I'm sorry. Whoa, some of us feel that way. Some of us feel that way still today, that there's something magical about sitting next to these people. In other words, what they're talking about is that being in their presence is something to write home about. That is an interesting affect and infection on us, a connection that I've deemed so thus not good for our countenance. You understand how bad that is? You understand? And you know, that was prevalent in the 40s and the 50s. Very, you know, we were very self-deprecating toward massa. Remember that shit? I remember a movie. It was oh God, I remember the movie. It was so odd. Adolf Caesar was in this movie. You guys know the movie. Put it in chat. Adolf Caesar. I'll remember it. And just like that, it was a scene him at a bar, and I mean, this guy is an incredible star. And he talked about a brother in France. They had him with a tail on his ass doing dance, and they took care of the problem and they resolved him, and the scene was incredible. Almost edible. I advise you to go to that scene. I'll remember it if you know what I mean. It's there. It's right on the tip of my tongue. It'll get there. It'll be there. All right, I had to say that. All right, folks, let's get back to the reading. I don't know. Black segregation, matter school. There was a time. There was a time. All right, enough of my rhyme.
Does mean that they think that the diverse schools offer better educational opportunities, and they favor strategies to increase access to those opportunities. The primary concern is educational opportunity, and the trends we report here show that their desires have been largely ignored.
Okay, so now they're going to get into background. Let's listen to this carefully, take notes, ask questions, take votes, and make no connections with any of this if it misses your mental. Otherwise, treat it as experimental. I'm sorry. Eat the meat, spit out the bone, leave what you don't accept alone.
Background. Racial subordination, separation, and unequal opportunities are hallmarks of American society. Blacks survived centuries of slavery where they were denied formal education. Schools are seen as the key to opportunity in American society, but they usually reflect and help perpetuate inequality by offering the best training to the most privileged children in the most affluent and educated areas. The most important local institutions, public schools, educate and help socialize 9 of every 10 American children. The reality is that the poorest and most excluded groups are concentrated in the weakest schools.
Think of that and what it's saying, what it's conveying. Don't you understand? There's behind this is some man. There are people pushing this narrative. It's a sinister imperative. Let's see.
Even Black children of successful middle-class families often end up in neighborhoods and schools far less challenging than similar white schools, partly because of persisting residential discrimination. After the Civil War and the ratification of 3 amendments to the Constitution guaranteeing equal rights to Blacks, the L876 election crisis was settled by an agreement to end federal enforcement of Black rights. 9 The federal courts allowed the former Confederate states to institute and enforce sweeping systems of racial control and segregation, the Jim Crow system, under the doctrine of separate but equal, spelled out in the Supreme Court's L896 plus EV. Ferguson decision. 10 It turned out that separation was vigilantly enforced, but equality was left to local control by officials who decided that very little was equal enough for Black children.
Now, consider that statement, okay? Consider what has been said there. Now, the quoted Supreme Court 1896 Plessy v. Ferguson is something that Negroes should be familiar with. I mean, you get familiar with all these amendments, all these pretendments. If you're gonna get your education up in line, then look at this, and you will find this is exactly how they treat our kind. Okay, hey, open your eyes, don't be blind. This is what it says: equality was left to local control by officials who decided that very little was equal enough for our Black children, our Negroes. Well, there's no equality down there. We're separate, we got equal. No, it's not. And that's how they allowed our systems to rot. All right, let's continue. And remember, folks, this ain't just a show. This is some education for the Negro Nation. And I need your support. And I'll say it again, I retort. This is serious business. I have to do this every day. I have to do this throughout the day. You have to hear what I have to say. And if you like what you hear, please draw your ears near. Give to the giving emphasis down there. That was as good as it gets. All right, let's see what we got.
Just 3 years after Plessy, for example, a unanimous Supreme Court authorized the elimination of high school for black students. Another unanimous Supreme Court ruled in the L. 954 Brown versus Board of Education decision, which helped trigger the civil rights movement, that in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place.
Stop. This is important, and I hope you didn't allow what was down here, was up here to slide past your mental. Okay? Right here, which we're going to start again, you need to hear that the unanimous Supreme Court authorized the elimination of high school for black students. You need to hear that again in 1954, that the board of that the Brown versus the Board of Education decision helped trigger the civil rights movement that they erased when they determined and replaced the suffragists movement. Now, they thought an improvement aligned with the white mind of white women who came in diving and swimming into the melee of all we had to say. Negrosity was pushed out of the way. That's right. And then they started infecting our schools with drugs. They started calling us thieves and thugs. You know, they really had us like looking like mugs, right? So education, okay, education, teaching, and in the mind of children, reaching, that is key to what they want to see for this country. And look at how each is connected with the other. I'm going to start from just again, my sisters and brothers. Listen.
Just 3 years after Plessy, for example, a unanimous Supreme Court authorized the elimination of high school for black students.
So that means they didn't have to learn. After the 9th grade, the 10th grade, the 8th grade, they didn't have to learn anymore. So they kept them dumb, stupid, and then criminalized that ignorance. Put them in jail. And some of you will fight to your death to stay to this place, to cling to white face. You feel me? You don't get what mechanisms they have yet to place in our way. I mean, and this is just back in the day.
Another unanimous Supreme Court ruled in the L. 954 Brown versus Board of Education decision, which helped trigger the civil rights movement, that in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. 12 Segregation, the court held, caused harm unlikely ever to be undone. 13 The decision, however, was fiercely resisted by state and local officials. 3 years after the Brown decision, a young Martin Luther King, Jr. called the decision a great beacon of light of hope to millions of disinherited people throughout the world who had dared only to dream of freedom.
Stop. We are going to stop on Martin for just moments. We know what money fueled Martin. We know that the mechanism was put in place for the show. We know. You see how history tells the tale? Now we understand without fail. That was simply a movement meant to kill the movement, not an improvement. It was a death knell. It was an easy sell with Martin at the helm. You know, and it seemed that it, put down all the uprising qualm. So I don't trust that movement. I call it a bowel movement. Look at the non-improvement. I don't see anything. It's foul. Let me tell you why. You know, I look at Ramal Sharpton. He's the one that catches my eye. I don't know what to tell you. Me, oh my, that dude is rich now. Woo-wee. Wasn't he a leader of the movement? Where are we going? Where are we going? Okay. I just wanted to say, all right, let's get back at it, folks. I'm sorry.
But, he said, the executive branch had been all too silent and apathetic and underlined the desperate need for civil rights legislation. 14. The great goal, he said, was to make possible a coming together of white people and colored people on the basis of a real harmony of interest and understanding. We must seek an integration based on mutual respect. 15. King's last campaign was the Chicago Freedom Movement. He first came to the Chicago movement in response to a series of massive boycotts and demonstrations demanding desegregation of the schools in the nation's second largest city. 16. Part of a surge of such movements in the North at the peak of the civil rights movement. The school system was intransigent, so King decided to focus his struggle on housing segregation. He concluded that Chicago was even more resistant to racial change than the South.
Think of that discovery made by Dr. King. Think of the realization in his mind and what it brings. You understand what he saw there? That attempting to change the school's structure was nearly an impossible act. But then he shows that Chicago up north was more racist, and that's a fact. And what do they do in Chicago? What do they do, folks? Stop! No, y'all gonna tell this side the jokes, okay? They grin and they cheese in your faces and please. To me, they're just not really genuine. They're not really, sincere. I think they like to tickle Negroes' ears, And I'm talking about up north. I'm talking about where the show is real cool, like, where they let Negroes go to school. But it's kind of interesting that in Chicago, he felt more resistance than he did in the South. The resistance was more of a persistence insistence. It's a wonder he came out of this alive. Oh, I forgot. He didn't survive.
Who could have guessed that the first black president would come from Chicago, and that the city's schools would remain among the most extremely segregated through his administration, as many public schools were closed and charters funded? Although segregation by law was held to be unconstitutional in education in the L. 954 Brown v. Board of Education decision, state and local officials fought very hard to block or minimize change. Virtually total segregation held in thousands of school districts until the Civil Rights Revolution, and the enactment and enforcement of the L. 964 Civil Rights Act produced large changes in the South in the late L. 960s. The only period of active coordinated use of federal power to enforce desegregation rights was 1965 to 1969. The federal courts, acting on their own, continued to expand the requirements for several more years, but the Nixon administration stopped enforcement of the L. 964 Civil Rights Act, and its 4 Supreme Court appointments led to serious limits by 1974.
Boom! What are we talking about? Don't leave the room. No, don't look away. No, you heard what he said. See, you understand the confluence of activity in congruence with the lack of activity and the movement. Nixon admitted openly to drugging or putting drugs into the communities of Negroes to diffuse what he thought we could use to arm and fight against the system and resist them. That's exactly what they thought at the time. And we know that in the 60s, the 65 through 69, the only period of active correspondent use of the federal power to enforce desegregation were those years in this nation. And then Nixon was elected, like white supremacy had to be protected. And then the federal courts, acting on their own, they continued to expand the requirements for several years into Nixon's administration, but then he stopped enforcement of the Civil Rights Act, and its 4 Supreme Court appointments led to serious limits by 1974. Now, need I have to tell you more? What is the parallel dynamic we see in the current courts? Excuse me, but Trump was elected after Obama, who supposedly protected your mama, and he didn't, right? But yet and still, Trump appointed 3 Supreme Court justices that are doing what? Deconstructing the advancements made, and it seems that Negroes have now been played. So it's a cyclic reciting of the same thing we're looking at. You understand? It happened in the 74s. You know, don't look away. Don't get shook at that. All right, we're gonna keep reading. Y'all just keep taking in what you're needing, because this is it.
Neither the courts nor the executive branch developed significant policies to desegregate northern schools. The Supreme Court put it off and said nothing about desegregating northern and western city school districts until 2 decades after Brown, and the policies it established made it very difficult to win an order and impossible to include the suburbs where, by then, the most respected and highly resourced schools and the white populations were concentrated. 17. The Supreme Court also blocked national equalization of school resources. 18. The federal government under Nixon, Ford, and other GOP presidents actively fought against urban desegregation and, by L. 981, the one significant source of federal funds for voluntary local action supporting diverse education was terminated. 19. A very conservative Supreme Court held in the L. 991 Oklahoma School District decision that the existing desegregation plans ordered by federal courts should be dissolved and school districts permitted to revert to practices that produce segregation.
Okay. What more does he need to say? You like it here? Huh? Is this where you want to stay? Seriously. No, I mean, look at the proof. I mean, I'm going to yell and scream until this hits the roof. I don't know what your problem is. I don't know if you think they're going to solve them. It's not going to happen. You see what they're doing? They seriously laughing. They are. They're laughing right in Negro faces who think they're going to make it up into white spaces. They are. As they deconstruct what they think and see as a way to discriminate against you and me. And they start in the schools and they're changing the rules. And what are you talking about, fools? What are you doing? What are you doing, Negroes? What are you doing? What are you doing? Look at this. I can bring you the proof. I'm bringing the receipts. I mean, if there's someone else that can prove it, well, let them compete. You sit in a land that doesn't want you. It's doing everything, telegraphing what they can do to flaunt you. And some of you just glide on by with a smile, as if they're inviting you to stay a while. Let's get back to it, folks. Like, subscribe, and share. You see the edifices, they're right down there.
Resources. 18. The federal government under Nixon, Ford, and other GOP presidents actively fought against urban desegregation and, by L. 981, the one significant source of federal funds for voluntary local action supporting diverse education was terminated. 19. A very conservative Supreme Court held in the L. 991 Oklahoma School District decision that the existing desegregation plans ordered by federal courts should be dissolved and school districts permitted to revert to practices that produced segregation. 20. The desegregation remedy was defined as a temporary measure that did not have to be maintained until schooling outcomes became equal.
And schooling outcomes never became equal, but they canceled it anyway because they don't want schooling to be equal. In fact, they want schooling to be as unequal as possible because they want to bring about white supremacy in this country. If just you were wondering.
A 2007 decision of the High Court outlawed many types of voluntary local desegregation plans.
A 2007 decision outlawed many types of voluntary local desegregation plans. This was just as Obama was about to become the man.
21. It was a stunning, historic reversal. Eventually, attention turned to other issues, such as Black control and Afro-American curriculum, which took place in a number of the nation's largest central cities by the 1980s, and later in hundreds of charter schools, but did not significantly change educational outcomes.
Well, now we need to stop and pause for the cause, because we see that the Black control and African American, the curriculum is now under attack. It's now not about placism. They make it not about racism, but they make it about what's taught in schools. They've taken Negroes for absolute fools. They want to control the narrative. It's their imperative to do so because they're never going to let their white supremacy let go. They're never going to do that. They're never, ever, ever going to let white supremacy go. They're always going to think that they should be on top. And so they're going to do all they can to remain the man. Okay. Nah, I'm not talking about taking a stand. I'm talking about getting ready to go. Why? Because the scriptures say so. Okay. Let's finish up.
By the 1980s, the focus changed to raising standards and sanctioning failing schools, 23, which remained the dominant approach for more than 3 decades until the last part of the Obama administration, when Secretary of Education John King raised the integration issue again. President Obama requested funding for the voluntary integration efforts, but Congress denied such funding. Schools have become steadily more segregated in all part of the...
Oh, wait, I wanted to just stop for a second. You mean when didn't they say you lie? And one of them called him boy. And then he asked for something. Well, saying no gave them a joy.
The country since 1990. Within a few years of King's assassination, the great civil rights laws and court decisions made the South the most integrated segment of American education and gains held for 2 decades. Then the increasingly conservative federal courts and administrations abandoned the goals of integrated schools and successfully dismantled much of what had been achieved. 24 school segregation is now more severe than in the late 1960s.
Whoa! Wasn't they yelling and screaming at black students in the 1960s who dared want to come sit next to some white folks? Good Lord, these people are absolute jokes.
In the conservative era, taking hold with the Reagan administration, the whole idea of integration was assailed, denounced as a failure, and virtually disappeared from public education policy debates for years. Desegregation plans, many of which had been successful, were dismantled and black students sent back to segregated, concentrated poverty neighborhood schools. Many intentionally integrated magnet schools, which had become popular with whites and blacks and successfully fostered voluntary desegregation, dropped integration goals and became increasingly white, selective, exam schools.
All right, well, that is that, and scat and shat, it's done. I run, but not too soon. Look, folks, what more evidence do you need? Setting aside all jokes. I mean, what are you going to believe? What did you just perceive? Do you belong here? Do you feel welcome? Are they making you feel welcome? Do you see the gradual incline toward the racist mind we now find, so inclined to just, be around? I mean, you not understand how this took shape? This is an echo from the 60s and the 70s into the 80s, into the 90s, into the 2000 and 2008 when Obama took office. And you saw the gradual and eventual full circle back to their racist state. These folks can't wait to go back into the 1920s and they want to go back to the 1800s. They want a white society, and I say God's going to give it to them in chains. But I fear that also will be the future for any Negro that remains. So pack your gear. Negroes are out of here. I do mean Negroes, and I do suppose those that are woke, those that hear the words I spoke. But of course, there are Black Americans and African Americans who will stay, and they will be caught in the fray and swept away. Like I said, folks, get to packing. And don't let any of your knowledge be lacking. All right, that's it. I quit. I just wanted to stop for the day. But I am so glad you heard what I say. I am brought to you by Twitwear. Twitwear is where you get your twid gear, because twid, that's what I do. is the sponsor of this show. And so, just so you know, you got to shop there. You got to go to twitwear.com. So you know, get 10% off looking at the show. Use TDRS, a promo code. I don't know what's wrong with me, do you? Okay. Well, it's been real. It's been wonderful. It's been all of that. And yes, brothers and sisters, I now have to scat. But before I go, let me tell you, I appreciate you being here. All right? And thank you so much for lending me your ear. But if you're going to go out there and you're going to be in public places, do me a favor, Negroes. Get that goddamn grin off your faces. Okay? Yeah, you heard me. I said it. Because that's what I do. Bye.